The galactic confluence chamber floated in the darkness of space like a crystal jewel. Inside its massive halls, 12 different alien species gathered around a circular platform that glowed with ancient symbols. The air smelled of fear and desperation. Ambassador Velthra stood at the center. Her crystalline body reflected the blue emergency lights that flashed throughout the station. Her forearms trembled as she held the ancient datapad containing the forbidden ritual. Around her, representatives from across the galaxy waited in silence. "We have no choice," Velthra said, her voice echoing through translation devices. "The entropy swarm has consumed 17 systems. Billions are dead. Our weapons do nothing. Our shields fail. This ritual is our last hope." A massive reptilian delegate named Krauth slammed his tail against the floor. "That ritual is myth, ancient nonsense from dead civilizations." "Perhaps," Velthra replied, "but every other option has failed. The swarm will reach this sector in 4 days. We either try this or we run, and there is nowhere left to run." The council voted. 8 species agreed. 4 refused and left immediately, taking their ships to flee deeper into space. Velthra watched them go and wondered if they were the smart ones. The remaining delegates formed a circle around the platform. Technical experts from 6 different species worked together to set up the equipment. Nobody really understood the ritual. The ancient texts were incomplete and written in dead languages. They had done their best to translate and reconstruct the ceremony. "The texts speak of Terra," Velthra explained to the assembled crowd. "A realm of eternal guardians, warriors who cannot be killed, beings of pure determination who have fought since the beginning of time." "Sounds too good to be true," muttered Krauth, but he stayed anyway. The ritual began. Energy flowed through crystalline conduits. Ancient machines hummed to life for the first time in thousands of years. The platform glowed brighter and brighter. Mathematical equations that defied physics scrolled across holographic displays. Velthra read the incantation phonetically. She had no idea what the words meant. The air began to crack and split. Reality itself seemed to bend inward toward the platform. A sound like tearing fabric filled the chamber. Then everything went wrong. Instead of a controlled summoning, the platform exploded with raw dimensional energy. The gateway tore open like a wound in space. Alarms screamed. The entire station shook violently. "Shut it down," someone yelled. "I cannot," Velthra shouted back. "The controls are not responding." The gateway grew wider. Through the swirling chaos, something massive began to emerge. Metal, hard angles, definitely not ethereal guardians. A ship materialized piece by piece, forcing its way through dimensions it was never meant to cross. The UNSC Perseverance crashed onto the platform with a sound like thunder. The research vessel was 300 meters long, designed for deep space exploration and military support. Sparks flew from its hull. Several sections showed damage from the violent dimensional transition. The gateway collapsed. The ancient machines burned out completely, melting into useless slag. Emergency containment fields activated automatically to prevent atmosphere loss. For a moment, nobody moved. Aliens and spacecraft stared at each other in mutual confusion. "What is that?" Krauth whispered. Before anyone could answer, a hatch on the ship's side opened. Ramps extended, and the first humans emerged. Captain Maria Santos stepped out wearing a dark blue uniform. Behind her, crew members in various states of dress and readiness poured out. Some carried weapons. Others held medical equipment. All of them looked extremely confused. The aliens stared in horror. These were the Eternal Guardians? These soft pink and brown creatures with their exposed skin and tiny frames. They looked so fragile, so weak. Some of them were bleeding from the rough transition. Santos surveyed the chamber with sharp, dark eyes. She took in the 12 species of aliens, the damaged ritual equipment, and the very obvious panic on everyone's faces. "Someone want to explain," she said slowly, "why my ship just got pulled through what my science officer is calling an impossible rift in space-time and dropped into what looks like a space station full of aliens." The translation devices struggled with her language for a moment, then began broadcasting her words to the assembled aliens. Velthra stepped forward cautiously. She had never seen anything like these creatures. They walked on 2 legs like several species did, but they looked so vulnerable. No natural armor. No protective shells. No scales or crystals or energy fields. "I am Ambassador Velthra of the Crystalline Collective. We performed a summoning ritual. We were attempting to call forth the legendary guardians of Terra, to help us fight an existential threat to our galaxy. Santos blinked. Terra, as in Earth? You tried to summon something from Earth? We do not know this Earth. We sought the myth realm of Terra. Terra is the Latin name for Earth, Santos said. You just kidnapped 847 humans through some kind of dimensional gate. More humans emerged from the ship. Military personnel, scientists, engineers, and medical staff. They spread out cautiously. Weapons not raised but ready. Their eyes took in everything with an analytical intensity that made Velthra uncomfortable. Kidnapped is perhaps accurate, Velthra admitted, her crystalline body dimming with shame. The gateway has burned out. We cannot send you back. The humans went very quiet at that news. Santos took a deep breath. Start from the beginning, Ambassador. What exactly were you running from that made you desperate enough to try summoning mythical warriors? Velthra explained about the entropy swarm. She showed them holographic recordings of the devastation. Entire star systems consumed by the dark, writhing mass that ate matter and energy alike. 17 civilizations erased. Trillions dead, and nothing the Galactic Coalition tried could stop it or even slow it down. The humans watched the recordings with grim expressions. And you thought summoning legendary guardians was a good plan? Asked Dr. James Chen, the ship's chief science officer, stepping forward. It was our only remaining plan, Velthra said quietly. How long until this swarm reaches this station? Santos asked. 4 days. 96 hours in your time measurement, Velthra replied. Santos turned to her crew. For a moment, she just looked at them. 847 people who had been conducting routine research just minutes ago. Now they were stranded in another dimension with no way home and a galaxy-eating phenomenon headed their way. Options? Santos asked her senior staff. We could demand they find a way to send us back, suggested Commander Rodriguez, her first officer. The equipment is destroyed, Dr. Chen said, examining the melted machines. It would take years to rebuild, and we do not have the knowledge base. We could try to hide, offered Lieutenant Park from engineering. Where? Santos asked. You heard her. Nowhere is safe. The humans talked quietly among themselves. The aliens watched nervously. These were supposed to be their saviors, but they just looked like scared, confused people. Finally, Santos turned back to Velthra. We will help you. Velthra's crystalline structure brightened with surprise. You will? But you are trapped here. You owe us nothing. We have wronged you greatly. Santos smiled, but it was not a happy expression. Ambassador, we did not survive 2 world wars, multiple pandemics, climate collapse, and first contact conflicts by giving up when things got hard. You accidentally dragged us into this mess, but running away is not what humans do. She extended her hand. We will help you fight this swarm, and then we will find a way home, deal? Velthra carefully touched the human's soft, warm hand with one crystalline appendage. Deal. Neither of them knew it yet, but that handshake would change the galaxy forever. The observation deck was crowded with aliens watching the humans with a mixture of curiosity and concern. 3 days remained until the entropy swarm arrived. In that time, both sides had been studying each other intensely. Velthra stood beside Krauth as they watched Captain Santos and her senior staff working at temporary stations the aliens had set up for them. They are so small, Krauth rumbled. Look at them. They have no natural defenses. Their skin tears easily. They must consume fuel constantly or they become weak. They leak fluids when damaged. They are endurance predators, Dr. Chen had explained during the initial briefings. We evolved to hunt by chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We can run for days. We heal from injuries that would kill most species. And we adapt to almost any environment. The aliens had nodded politely but remained unconvinced. These soft creatures did not look like predators or guardians. But then strange things started happening. A critical power core on the station began failing. The alien engineers panicked because the replacement parts were 3 systems away. If the core failed, life support for an entire section would go down. Lieutenant Sarah Park from the human engineering team asked to look at it. The aliens reluctantly agreed, expecting nothing. Park disappeared into the maintenance shaft with a toolbox. She emerged 6 hours later, covered in grease and coolant, with a massive smile on her face. Fixed it, she announced. How? The alien chief engineer demanded. We have been trying for 2 days. Park held up a roll of silver tape and a twisted piece of metal she had shaped by hand. Duct tape and creative thinking. It will hold for a few weeks at least. Should be enough time to get proper parts. The alien engineer stared at the repair job. By all rights, it should not work. It violated 3 principles of their technology. But the power core hummed along perfectly. You just made it work. With tape? Duct tape fixes everything, Park said cheerfully. Well, duct tape and stubbornness. That was the first hint that humans were different. The second hint came during the medical examinations. Both sides wanted to understand each other's biology in case emergency treatment became necessary. The alien doctors were horrified by human physiology. Your blood does not clot properly without a complex chemical cascade. Dr. Zixtar, an insectoid physician, said with obvious distress. Your bones break under stress. Your organs can fail independently. You can die from simply being too hot or too cold. How do you survive? We are pretty hard to kill, actually, replied Dr. Sarah Martinez, the human chief medical officer. Humans have survived having metal rods through their skulls. We have lived after losing massive amounts of blood. People have fallen from aircraft and survived. We are fragile, yes, but we are also incredibly resilient. That makes no sense. Welcome to Earth biology, Martinez said with a grin. But the real shock came when the humans started analyzing the entropy swarm. The Galactic Coalition had been studying the swarm for months. They had libraries of data, analysis from the best scientific minds of 12 species, and absolutely no useful conclusions. The swarm appeared to be a natural phenomenon, like a storm or a black hole. Terrible but mindless and unstoppable. Dr. Chen spent 2 days reviewing all the data. Then he asked for a sample. A sample? Velthra repeated, her crystalline body flickering with alarm. A sample of the swarm? That is incredibly dangerous. It could contaminate the station. It could spread. We need to understand it, Chen insisted. The council debated for hours. Finally, they agreed, mostly because they had nothing left to lose. A small container with heavy shielding was retrieved from a research probe that had briefly touched the swarm's edge. Inside was a fragment no larger than a human fist. It writhed and pulsed with dark energy. Chen and his team set up a containment field in an isolated lab. The alien scientists watched from behind multiple barriers, ready to evacuate at the first sign of danger. Chen walked right up to the containment field. You are too close, hissed Dr. Zixtar. I need to observe it properly, Chen replied calmly. For 3 hours, Chen studied the sample from every angle. He ran tests that made the alien scientist nervous. He exposed it to radiation, electromagnetic fields, and various particles. He took notes constantly. Finally, he emerged from the lab and called for an emergency meeting. The council gathered quickly. Chen looked tired but excited. The entropy swarm is not natural, he announced. The room erupted in noise. Multiple species tried to speak at once. Impossible! Kruth roared. We have studied it for months. It shows no signs of artificial creation. Chen pulled up a holographic display. Look at this pattern. The way it consumes matter is not random. There is a mathematical precision to it. And here, he highlighted another section. The swarm repairs damage to itself using a systematic approach. That is not evolution. That is programming. Velthra leaned closer. Programming? You mean someone created this? Something created it, Chen confirmed. And if it was created, it can be stopped. We just need to find the control mechanism. Hope flickered through the chamber for the first time in months, but it was cautious hope. Even if you are correct, Velthra said slowly, we have very little time. The swarm arrives in less than 3 days. Then we better get to work, Santos said, entering the chamber. Dr. Chen, what do you need? Access to every probe, every scan, every piece of data from every encounter with the swarm. And I need the computing power of this entire station. You have it, Velthra said immediately, her earlier doubts fading. The next 2 days were chaotic. Human and alien scientists worked side by side. Language barriers slowed things down, but determination pushed them forward. The humans showed an unusual willingness to take risks that made the aliens nervous. During a meal break, Velthra sat with Santos in the station's dining facility. Your people are very different from what I expected, Velthra admitted. We get that a lot, Santos replied, eating something the food synthesizers had created that was supposedly similar to Earth food. It did not taste quite right, but it was edible. You seem calm. We trapped you here, dragged you away from your home, placed you in danger, yet you help us without hesitation. Santos put down her fork. Ambassador, humanity has been through some very dark times. Wars that killed millions, disasters that destroyed cities, plagues that wiped out populations. We learned something important from all that suffering. What did you learn? That when things are at their worst, when everything seems hopeless, that is exactly when you cannot give up. That is when you have to stand up and fight, not for yourself but for others. Because if we do not help each other, what is the point of surviving? Velthra was quiet for a moment. Her species did not have the same emotional range as humans, but she was beginning to understand why the ancient texts might have spoken of these creatures. Your species has suffered greatly, she observed. Yes, but we are still here. Suffering makes you stronger if you let it. We do not run from hard things. We run toward them. An alarm interrupted their conversation. The lights shifted to red. The swarm has arrived early, a voice announced over the station's communication system. Impact in 24 hours. Santos stood immediately. Time to see what humans can really do. Velthra followed her to the command center. She had a feeling that the next day would either save the galaxy or doom them all. Looking at the determined expression on Captain Santos's face, she found herself believing in the impossible. Perhaps the summoning had not been a mistake after all. Perhaps they had found exactly what they needed, not ethereal guardians of legend, but something more remarkable. Ordinary people who refused to stop fighting, no matter how bad things got. The crystalline ambassador watched the humans mobilizing for battle and felt something she had not felt in months. Hope. The command center looked like organized chaos. Holographic displays showed the entropy swarm approaching like a dark wave of destruction. 24 hours. That was all the time they had left. Captain Santos stood at the center of the room, studying tactical displays with her senior officers. Around them, alien commanders prepared evacuation procedures. Ships were being loaded, supplies gathered. Everyone was getting ready to run. We are abandoning the station, Velthra announced, her voice heavy with defeat. We will retreat to the outer colonies and hope the swarm does not follow. Or, Santos said, not looking away from her display, we could fight it. The room went silent. Every alien turned to stare at the human captain. Kruth spoke first, his massive reptilian form seeming to swell with disbelief. Fight it? Captain Santos, did you not review the data? Every fleet that has engaged the swarm has been destroyed. Every weapon has failed. Running is the only logical option. Logical, maybe, Santos agreed. But Dr. Chen found something interesting. Show them, Doctor. Chen brought up a three-dimensional model of the swarm. Based on analysis of hundreds of encounters, we have identified a pattern. The swarm has a central coordination point. Think of it like a brain or a command node. It is buried deep in the center of the mass, protected by layers of the swarm itself. We know this, Velthra said, but it is impossible to reach. Nothing can survive inside the swarm. Nothing you have tried, Santos corrected. But we have an idea. She brought up a tactical schematic. It showed small ships flying directly into the swarm, navigating through it using calculated paths, and deploying resonance bombs at specific coordinates. The alien commanders stared at the plan like it was insane. This is suicide, Kruth stated flatly. Probably, Santos admitted. Our simulations show about a 12% survival rate for the pilots. 12%? Velthra's crystalline body flickered with horror. And you call this a plan? Santos looked at her allies calmly. It is better than 0%, which is what we have got if we run. The swarm will eventually catch us, but if we hurt it badly enough, maybe we can slow it down or stop it completely. No pilot will agree to this, Kruth said with certainty. Santos turned to her crew. Lieutenant Park, Lieutenant Chen, Commander Rodriguez. Would you fly this mission? All three humans stepped forward without hesitation. Yes, Captain, they said in unison. Kruth's jaw dropped. You just told them they have a 12% chance of survival and they volunteered immediately? That is what humans do, Santos said simply. We volunteer for impossible missions because someone has to try. Because 12% is not 0%. Because doing something is better than doing nothing. Velthra looked around the room at the other humans. They all had the same expression. Determination, fear, yes, but also resolve. You are all insane, Velthra whispered. Maybe, Rodriguez said with a slight smile, but we are the insane people with a plan. Do you have a better one? The aliens did not. Over the next 16 hours, they prepared. The humans designed small, fast attack ships using human and alien technology combined. The alien engineers were amazed at how quickly the humans worked and how willing they were to improvise solutions. This power coupling should not work, an alien engineer said, watching Park connect systems that were never designed to interface. But does it work? Park asked. The engineer checked. Yes, somehow. Then it should work. Human engineering rule number 1. If it works, do not question it too much. The biggest problem was pilots. The maneuvers required to navigate through the swarm would subject pilots to extreme gravitational forces. Humans called them G-forces. Most alien species would die from such acceleration. Our bodies cannot handle it, Velthra explained. The pressure would cause our internal organs to fail. Humans can handle about 9 Gs before passing out, Dr. Martinez explained. With special suits and training, we can push that higher. Our cardiovascular system is built for it because we evolved under relatively high gravity. So only humans can fly this mission, Kroth said, understanding dawning on him. Looks that way, Santos confirmed. In the end, 12 human pilots volunteered. They chose the best 6 based on skills and experience. 6 tiny ships for 6 pilots. 6 chances to change everything. The alien species contributed weapons and shield technology. The humans contributed piloting skills and a willingness to fly directly into certain death. 4 hours before the swarm arrived, they held a briefing. Santos stood before the 6 pilots. Behind her, hundreds of aliens watched silently. You all know the mission parameters, Santos said. Navigate to the center of the swarm. Deploy the resonance bombs. Get out, the odds are not good. So you are saying there is a chance? Lieutenant Park said, grinning. The other pilots laughed. The aliens did not understand the joke, but they felt the strange courage in that laughter. Why do you laugh? Velthra asked quietly. You could die in a few hours. If we are going to die, Park replied, we might as well die doing something that matters. Plus, laughing beats crying. An alien observer began recording everything. Later, these recordings would be studied across the galaxy. Scholars would try to understand how a species could face annihilation with jokes and smiles. The swarm arrived exactly on time. It emerged from faster-than-light travel like a spreading stain on reality itself. Dark energy and writhing matter stretched across thousands of kilometers. It moved with terrible purpose toward the station. The 6 human ships launched. They were tiny compared to the swarm, like insects attacking a storm. Santos watched from the command center. Her hands gripped the edge of the console until her knuckles turned white. Beside her, Velthra observed silently, her crystalline form pulsing with colors that indicated deep distress. This is Dagger 1. Lieutenant Park's voice came over the communication channel. We are going in. See you on the other side. The ships accelerated directly toward the swarm. As they approached, the darkness began to react. Tendrils of destructive energy reached out like grasping fingers. Park's ship twisted and spun, avoiding the attacks with maneuvers that should have been impossible. The other 5 pilots followed her lead, their ships dancing through certain death. Dagger 3 is taking fire, a voice called out. Shield holding barely. Keep moving, Park ordered. Do not give it a chance to lock onto you. They disappeared into the swarm. For several minutes, the command center received nothing but static. Santos stopped breathing. Then Park's voice crackled through. We are inside. It is bad, really bad, like flying through a nightmare. Status of other pilots? Santos demanded. All 5 still with me. Dagger 4 lost shields. Dagger 2 has hull damage. But we are still flying. The ships pushed deeper. The swarm tried to crush them, dissolve them, tear them apart. The pilots pushed their ships to the absolute limit. They endured G-forces that would have liquefied most species. Target coordinates reached, Park announced. Deploying resonance bombs now. 6 small devices activated. Deep inside the swarm, they emitted a specific frequency that Dr. Chen had calculated would disrupt the swarm's cohesion. The effect was immediate and violent. The swarm began to convulse. Massive sections of it broke apart. The coordination that had made it so deadly started to fail. It is working, Velthra shouted. The swarm is destabilizing. All ships, get out now, Santos ordered. 5 ships turned and began the desperate run back toward clear space. The swarm thrashed around them, now attacking randomly instead of with coordination. Where is Dagger 4? Santos asked, her voice tight. Silence answered her. Dagger 4, respond, she said again. More silence. This is Dagger 1, Park said, her voice strained. Dagger 4 took a direct hit. Ship is gone. So are Daggers 5 and 6. They bought us time to plant the bombs. 3 ships made it out. 3 did not. The mission was a success. The swarm was wounded, maybe fatally. But 3 humans had paid the ultimate price. When the surviving pilots returned, they were greeted by a crowd of aliens and humans. There were cheers, but also tears. That night, Captain Santos held a memorial service. It was short and simple. She spoke the names of the fallen pilots. She told one story about each of them. Then she saluted and returned to duty. The aliens watched this ritual with confusion and growing respect. They grieve deeply, Velthra observed, but they do not let grief stop them. No, Santos agreed quietly. We honor the dead by continuing their mission. They did not die for nothing. They died protecting others. That is worth grieving, but it is also worth celebrating. Krauth approached Santos. The massive reptilian warrior bowed his head, a sign of deep respect in his culture. I called you insane, he said. I was wrong. You are not insane. You are something far more dangerous. What is that? Santos asked. You are humans, the Death Worlders, the ones who laugh at death and charge forward anyway. Santos smiled sadly. We prefer to call ourselves survivors, but your name works too. The swarm was wounded but not destroyed. It was adapting, learning from the attack. The battle was far from over. But now, for the first time, the galaxy had hope, and it had humans. The wounded entropy swarm retreated after the bombing run, pulling back several light years to regroup. The Galactic Coalition celebrated their first victory against the seemingly unstoppable threat. But Dr. Chen and his team of human and alien scientists were not celebrating. They were worried. It is learning, Chen said, pointing at data streaming across holographic displays. Look at these patterns. The swarm is reorganizing itself. It adapted its defensive protocols after our attack. Captain Santos studied the readings with tired eyes. She had not slept in 40 hours. None of them had. How long until it attacks again? 3 days, maybe 4, Chen replied. And when it comes back, our previous tactics will not work. It will be ready for us. Velthra's crystalline body dimmed with concern. We hurt it badly, but not badly enough. We need to find the source, Chen insisted. My analysis confirms that the swarm was created artificially. Something built this weapon. If we can find the control mechanism, we can shut it down permanently. The galaxy is vast, Krauth rumbled. How do we even begin searching? Chen pulled up a star map showing the path of destruction the swarm had carved through space. Look at this trajectory. The swarm is not moving randomly. It is following a pattern, spiraling outward from a central point. He traced the path backward, running the calculations in reverse. The lines converged on a region of space that had been catalogued centuries ago as empty and unremarkable. There, Chen said, highlighting the coordinates. That is where the swarm began. That is where we will find answers. Santos made the decision quickly. We take a small fleet, fast ships. We investigate while the swarm is recovering. It is dangerous, Velthra warned. We will be traveling through space the swarm has already consumed. There may be remnants, pockets of contamination. Dangerous is what we do best, Santos replied. They assembled a mixed crew, 3 ships, 2 alien vessels built for speed and sensor capability, and 1 modified human shuttle with enhanced shields. 30 people total, 15 humans and 15 aliens representing 4 different species. It was the first truly integrated mission, humans and aliens working together not out of desperation, but out of genuine cooperation. The journey took 2 days at maximum faster than light speed. They passed through systems that had been thriving colonies just months ago. Now they were empty, planets stripped of all matter, stars dimmed and dying. The devastation was complete and terrifying. This is what we are fighting, Velthra said quietly as they watched a dead planet drift past. This is what will happen to the entire galaxy if we fail. They reached the coordinates. Sensors immediately detected something unusual. A massive structure floating in empty space. It was shaped like a twisted spiral, built from materials that did not match any known civilization. That is old, said Dr. Zixtar, the insectoid scientist. Thousands of years old at minimum, maybe tens of thousands. And it is broadcasting, Chen added. A signal on frequencies we almost missed. This is the control station. They approached carefully. The structure was damaged, clearly abandoned. But systems still flickered with power. Automated functions continued running after millennia of isolation. Santos led a boarding party personally. She took 5 humans and 5 aliens, including Velthra. They wore protective suits and carried weapons. Nobody knew what they might find inside. The interior of the structure was like nothing any of them had seen before. The architecture followed strange geometries. Corridors bent in ways that hurt to look at. Gravity fluctuated randomly. Whatever built this did not think like we do, Velthra observed. They found the control center deep inside the structure. It was a massive chamber filled with machines that still hummed with power. Holographic displays showed streams of data in languages nobody could read, but in the center of it all was something they could understand. A historical log. A recording left behind by the station's creators. Dr. Chen accessed it carefully. The translation system struggled with the ancient language, but eventually the message began playing. The hologram showed a being unlike anything in the current galaxy. Tall, with multiple limbs and sensory organs arranged in patterns that made no biological sense, but the intelligence in its many eyes was unmistakable. "We are the architects," the recording said. "We built this galaxy. We shaped civilizations and guided evolution. But we grew tired. We decided to leave for new realities, new dimensions beyond this universe." The hologram changed, showing vast construction projects. The being continued speaking. "Before we left, we built the cleanser, a tool to reset the galaxy, to wipe it clean so that when we return we may begin again with a fresh foundation. The cleanser will remove all complex life, all advanced civilizations, all traces of what came before." Santos felt cold dread settling in her stomach. "The cleanser was meant to activate after we departed," the architect continued. "It would complete its work in 1,000 cycles. Then it would wait for our return." The hologram flickered. The architect's expression changed, showing something that might have been regret. "But we are not returning. Our journey to the next reality succeeded and we have no reason to come back. I leave this message as a warning. The cleanser cannot be deactivated remotely. Someone must access the core manually and enter the shutdown sequence. But doing so will trigger a massive energy release. The cleanser will be destroyed, yes, but everything within 1 light year will be destroyed as well." The recording ended. The boarding party stood in silence. "It is a doomsday weapon," Velthra whispered, "created by gods who abandoned us." "Not gods," Santos said firmly. "Just another species that thought they had the right to determine the fate of the galaxy. They were wrong then and they are wrong now. But the recording said deactivating it will cause a massive explosion." Krauth said, having joined them via communication link. "How do we stop it without killing everyone nearby?" Chen was already studying the control systems. "The explosion happens because of built-up energy that needs to be released. But if someone stays behind to manually redirect that energy into subspace away from normal space, the explosion would happen in another dimension." "Someone stays behind?" Velthra repeated. "You mean someone has to die?" "Yes," Chen said simply. "That is the only way." They continued exploring the station for hours, hoping to find another solution. But the architects had been thorough. There was no remote control, no timer, no alternative method. Someone had to be present at the core to manually input the shutdown sequence and direct the energy release. It was a suicide mission, and they all knew it. They returned to their ships and called an emergency meeting via holographic link. All the ships in the fleet joined the conference. Santos explained what they had found. The response was immediate and unanimous. From the human crew, "I volunteer," said Lieutenant Park. "I volunteer," said Commander. "Rodriguez, I volunteer," said Dr. Martinez one by one. Every single human on the mission volunteered without hesitation. The aliens watched in stunned silence. "Why?" Velthra demanded, her voice breaking with emotion. "Why do you all volunteer to die? We dragged you into this. This is not your fight. You have no obligation to sacrifice yourselves." Santos met her friend's gaze through the hologram. "Ambassador, you still do not understand humans." This stopped being about obligation the moment we learned what was at stake. Trillions of lives across hundreds of species. Entire civilizations that will never exist if the swarm continues. How could we not volunteer? "But you want to go home," Velthra said. "You want to see your Earth again?" "Of course we do," Santos replied. "But wanting to live and needing to do the right thing are not the same. Sometimes the right thing costs everything. That does not make it less right." They drew straws. It was an old human tradition for making difficult choices. 5 humans would go to the control core. 1 would stay behind. 5 straws of different lengths drawn without looking. Captain Maria Santos drew the short straw. Her crew reacted immediately, arguing, trying to find another way. Santos silenced them with a single gesture. "This is my decision," she said, "as your captain and as your friend. I choose this." The plan was set. They would go to the core. They would shut down the swarm. 1 human would make sure the energy was redirected safely, and everyone else would escape. They had 24 hours to prepare. In that time, Santos recorded messages for her family on Earth. She wrote letters she hoped would someday reach home. She spent time with her crew, sharing stories and memories. Velthra found her in the observation deck, staring at the stars. "I wish I had never performed that ritual," Velthra said. "I wish we had never brought you here." Santos smiled. "I do not. Yes, I will die, but I will die saving countless lives. How many people get to say their death had meaning? How many people get to choose to be heroes?" "Humans are very strange," Velthra said, but her voice was warm. "Yes," Santos agreed. "We really are." She looked at the stars one last time. "Let us go save the universe." The Entropy Swarm's core was exactly as terrible as they had imagined. The 5-person team floated through an environment that defied physics. Space twisted in on itself. Time seemed to flow backward and forward simultaneously. Energy and matter merged into forms that should not exist. Captain Santos led the way. Behind her, Dr. Chen carried the equipment needed to interface with the control systems. Lieutenant Park and Dr. Martinez provided technical support. Commander Rodriguez watched their backs, weapon ready, though nothing could truly protect them here. Their suits groaned under the stress. Alarms constantly warned about radiation levels and dimensional instability. Every breath felt like it might be their last. "How much further?" Santos asked, her voice distorted by interference. Chen checked his readings. 300 meters. The core is directly ahead. They pushed forward through the nightmare landscape. Around them, the swarm writhed and pulsed. They could feel it now, the intelligence behind it. Not consciousness exactly, but purpose. Directive. The programming the architects had embedded thousands of years ago, still running perfectly. Finally, they reached it. The core of the entropy swarm sat in the center of an impossible chamber. It looked like a sphere of pure darkness surrounded by rings of energy that rotated in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Chen immediately began setting up the interface equipment. His hands moved with practiced precision despite the hostile environment. "I need 15 minutes," he said. Those were the longest 15 minutes of their lives. The swarm seemed to sense their presence. Pressure built around them. Reality itself pushed back, trying to expel them. But humans were stubborn. They held their ground. "Got it," Chen finally announced. "I have access to the control systems. The shutdown sequence is ready. Captain, when you activate this, you will have approximately 5 minutes to redirect the energy release. After that, the containment will fail and everything within 1 light year will be vaporized." Santos nodded. "Understood. Everyone else get moving. Head back to the ships. Nobody moved." "That is an order," Santos said more firmly. "With respect, Captain," Rodriguez said, "you cannot make us leave." "I can, and I am." "We all drew straws," Martinez added. "But we all knew whoever drew short would try to stay. We agreed that was not acceptable." Santos looked at her crew, 4 people who had become more than colleagues. They were family. "I cannot ask you to die with me," she said softly. "You are not asking," Park replied. "We are choosing." "No." Santos's voice turned hard. "This is my decision. My sacrifice. You all have families. People waiting for you. I will not take that away from them." She pulled her sidearm and pointed it at her own crew. "Go now, do not make me force you." They stared at her. Then, slowly, they began moving toward the exit. Rodriguez looked back once, tears streaming down his face. "It has been an honor, Captain." "The honor was mine, Commander." She watched them leave. Then she was alone with the core of the swarm and the countdown to her death. Santos activated the shutdown sequence. Immediately, alarms blared. The core began to destabilize. Energy built rapidly, looking for release. She grabbed the manual controls Chen had set up. They were crude, hastily built, but they should work. Should being the critical word. The energy needed to be redirected into subspace, away from the normal universe, into a dimension where its explosive force would harm nothing. But the controls were complicated. More complicated than she had been led to believe. Santos realized with cold certainty that she did not have enough time. Back on the fleet, the 4 evacuated crew members reached their ships. Velthra and Kruth waited anxiously. "Where is the captain?" Velthra demanded. "She made us leave," Rodriguez said, his voice hollow. The alien commanders looked at each other. Then, without a word, Kruth began issuing orders in his native language. "What are you doing?" Martinez asked. "Something stupid," Velthra replied. "Something very human. The alien ships activated experimental shield systems. They were prototype shields designed to withstand dimensional rifts, never properly tested. The alien engineers had been working on them in secret, inspired by human determination to find impossible solutions. We are going to create a corridor," Kruth explained. "A path through the energy release. It will only last for a fraction of a second, but that might be enough." "Enough for what?" Chen asked. "To pull your captain out," Velthra said. "That is insane," Park whispered. "We learned from the best," Kruth replied with something that might have been a smile. Inside the core, Santos struggled with the controls. Energy levels were rising faster than projected. She had maybe 2 minutes left. The redirect systems were not responding properly. She laughed bitterly. After everything, she was going to fail at the last moment. Then her communication system crackled to life. "Captain Santos, this is Velthra. We are coming for you." "Negative," Santos shouted. "Stay back. The explosion will kill you." "Probably," Velthra agreed. "But there is a chance it will not. And as you humans taught us, even a small chance is worth taking." Santos felt tears on her face. "You crazy, wonderful aliens." "We learned it from you," Velthra replied. Santos focused on the controls with renewed determination. If they were risking their lives for her, she would not let them down. Her fingers flew over the interface, making adjustments, compensating for fluctuations. The energy was almost at critical mass. 90 seconds left. She made one final adjustment. The redirect systems locked into place. The energy would be pushed into subspace. The explosion would happen somewhere else. 60 seconds. "Corridor forming," Kruth's voice announced. "Captain, start running. We will guide you." Santos abandoned the controls and ran. Behind her, the core began its final countdown. Energy crackled and surged. 30 seconds. She burst out of the chamber, following the navigation markers the fleet was transmitting. The environment around her was collapsing as the swarm destabilized. 15 seconds, she saw it ahead. A shimmering tunnel through space itself, held open by shields that were never meant to bear this kind of stress. 10 seconds. Santos dove through the corridor. Energy lashed at her from all sides. Her suit failed. She felt intense heat and cold simultaneously. 5 seconds, hands grabbed her, alien and human, pulling her into a ship's airlock. 3 seconds. The airlock sealed. 2 seconds. The ships jumped to faster than light speed. 1 second. Behind them, the entropy swarm's core exploded. The energy redirected into subspace exactly as planned. In normal space, there was only a brief flash of light. But in another dimension, a star was born and immediately died. The swarm collapsed. All across the galaxy, the dark tendrils of destructive energy dissipated. The nightmare that had consumed 17 systems simply ceased to exist. They had won. Santos woke up in the medical bay. Every part of her body hurt. Dr. Martinez stood over her, smiling. "Welcome back, Captain. You have been unconscious for 3 days. Did it work?" Santos asked. "See for yourself." Martinez helped her to the observation window. Outside, she could see dozens of ships. Alien vessels from every species in the coalition. And beyond them, a massive structure under construction. "What is that?" Santos asked. "A gateway," Velthra said, entering the medical bay. Her crystalline body glowed with colors Santos now recognized as happiness. "We have been working non-stop since you destroyed the swarm. Our scientists, your scientists, all working together. We are building a gateway to send you home." Santos felt her heart leap. "Home to Earth?" "It will take time," Velthra admitted. "Weeks, maybe months, but yes, you will see your Earth again." Santos started crying. She had accepted death so completely that the possibility of life felt overwhelming. "But there is more," Velthra continued. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. "We voted unanimously. Humanity is granted full membership in the Galactic Coalition. When you return to Earth, we will follow you. We will make formal first contact with your species. Why? Santos asked. We are just one species. One ship of people. Krauth entered the room, ducking his massive frame through the doorway. You are the species that saved us. You are the Death Worlders who laugh at impossible odds. You are the people who taught us that courage is not the absence of fear, but acting despite it. Your species will change the galaxy, Velthra added. Already you have changed us. Before you arrived, we were ready to give up, to accept defeat. You showed us another way. Santos looked around at her crew, all of them alive and recovering. We just did what needed to be done. Exactly, Velthra said. And that is what makes humans remarkable. You see what needs to be done and you do it. No matter the cost. The weeks passed quickly. The gateway took shape. A massive ring of technology spanning kilometers. Human and alien engineers worked side by side, combining their knowledge. Finally, the day came. The UNSC Perseverance was repaired and ready. The gateway was complete. The entire fleet gathered to see them off. Thousands of aliens and one ship of humans. Velthra gave a speech. It was broadcast across the entire galaxy. We summoned them by accident, she said. A desperate ritual by desperate people. We expected legends. We expected gods. Instead, we received something far more valuable. We received humans. People who bleed in fear and doubt but who stand up anyway. Who run toward danger instead of away from it. Who sacrifice themselves for people they barely know. She paused, her voice thick with emotion.